The LA Kings turn in another solid performance and get ready for this week's trade deadline. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're would love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. We're also on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years, the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It's a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 17 years and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. The Kings head into this week's trade deadline with two solid performances in their last two games, and they hold the number one wildcard spot in the West as we record this show. After a great performance in a road win over the top team in the West, the Vancouver Canucks, Kings rolled over the New Jersey Devils in an early Sunday afternoon game in LA. If you missed it, we'll give you a quick recap, but first tell you about the game lineup for the Kings. Now, the Kings would utilize that same lineup they had against the Canucks, an 11-7 lineup. That's 11 forwards and 7 defenders. Arthur Kaliyev, again, would be the one healthy scratch for the LA Kings, with Adrian Kempe, Victor Arvidsson, Mikey Anderson, and Carl Grundstrom still out with injuries. Cam Talbot made his third straight start in net. So as for the game itself, things did not start well for the Kings as they fell behind 15 seconds into the game. A bad bounce off the boards after a clearing attempt went right to a Devils player, Timo Meier, and he would score. Nothing Cam Talbot could do about that one. And the New Jersey Devils would take a 1-0 lead, and that would be it. For New Jersey, the Kings would respond with 2 goals in the period. Philip Deneau gets his 12th of the season and his first goal at home this season. Kevin Fiala and Vladislav Gavrikov with the assists. Alex Laferriere added his 9th of the season with PL Dubois assisting, and the Kings had a 2-1 lead after one. In the second period, Philip Deneau added his 2nd of the game, 13th of the season, with assists from Matt Roy and Trevor Moore. Kevin Fiala gets his 19th of the year, a power play goal. Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty with assists. And in the third period, the only question would be, would Philip Deneau get the hat trick? The answer was yes. The Devils pulled their goalie down 3 goals with about 5 minutes to go, and Deneau would get an empty netter for his first hat trick as a member of the LA Kings. Cam Talbot had 30 saves in net. 5-1, Kings get the win. By the way, New Jersey fired their head coach, Lindy Ruff, a day after losing to the Kings. As for the game stats for the Kings win over the Devils, 5-1, Kings get the victory. Shots on goal actually favored New Jersey in this one, 31-23. The power plays, Kings were 1 for 3, while New Jersey was 0 for 2. Of course, they did have an extended look late in the game with an extra man. It's not officially a power play, but the Kings were able to take care of that as well. Faceoffs won, favored LA 33-30. Your block shots favored the Kings 20-13. Hits were in favor of the Devils 23-13. Solid game all the way around for LA. We'll certainly get to our pluses and minuses here in just a moment, but after a Kings win, always fun to pass out the 3 stars of the game as selected by me. I don't know who the 3 stars were for the media, and I don't really care, frankly, because this is my show, and I get to pick the 3 stars that I think were the top 3 players of the LA Kings. I'm going to go with goalie Cam Talbot for my number 3 star. 3rd straight start for Cam. He has won the last 2 over Vancouver and now over New Jersey. Overall record of 18-14-5 now on the season. Did he make a ton of great saves in the win over New Jersey? No, but he looked very much in control, played a solid all-around game, and it certainly appears that Talbot has now reclaimed that number 1 starting job in net from David Riddick, at least for the moment. Number 2 star is Kevin Fiala, a goal and 2 assists against the Devils. He now has 6 goals and 12 points in his last 7 games 8 points in his last 3 games, and now is your LA Kings leading scorer with 55 points. We talked about somebody stepping up in the absence of Adrian Kempe, who at the time of his injury was the Kings leading scorer. Well, Kevin Fiala has literally done that, becoming the team's top scorer and really taking another step with juice out of the lineup. Fiala is the engine driving the LA Kings right now. But for our number one star, we have to go with Phillip Danault. 3 goals, his first 3 goals at home this season, his first hat trick as an LA King, the first hat trick this season for an LA Kings player, and for Phillip Danault, just his second career hat trick. He is just such a great kind of unsung player in some ways. Good to see him getting a bit of a spotlight here in this one, and just a hard-working player, does all the right things, all around great player for the LA Kings. And let's be honest, I mean, he's part of the reason why Pierre-Luc Dubois probably isn't having the season that a lot of people thought he would have or wanted him to have, because Phillip Danault is the Kings' second-line center right now. And I'll admit, going into the year after signing Dubois, I really thought PLD was going to be the Kings' second-line center, but I understand why he isn't, because Phillip Danault is such a hard-nosed, reliable, dependable, all-around good player. Now, does he do anything really outstanding? I wouldn't say that, but he does everything better than good. He's just solid, and I it's hard to. I mean, I get the logic of him being the second-line center. We'll see if that continues next season or not. But he's, like I said, good to see a player like Phillip Danault, like I said, get the spotlight for at least one game, because he does a lot of dirty work, a lot of unsung things for the LA Kings as far as their success. As far as the pluses and minuses in this one, very much like the game against Vancouver, tons of pluses, not a lot of minuses. I loved the way the Kings followed up that big win in Vancouver with another big win. It's not just about a really good performance here and there. It's about putting together consistent performances, and we'll see if they can keep it going when they rematch against Vancouver this week as they return home for a little homestand. But nice to see back-to-back solid wins by the Kings. Don't be satisfied or happy with the game you had against Vancouver. Carry it over and use it to keep that momentum going against New Jersey. They certainly did that. I love the way the Kings responded after that fluke goal in the opening seconds. They didn't get down. They realized there's still a ton of hockey left to be played. We're not going to overreact to just what was a bad bounce, and sometimes those things go against you in hockey. They knew they were the better team. They played like the better team, and in the end ended up winning convincingly after allowing that early first goal. I thought the team defense on Devil star Jack Hughes was solid. Jack Hughes is a rising young star in the NHL. The Devils are struggling. I think that he probably tried to put a bit too much on his shoulders, which is understandable. And the Kings made sure he was not going to be the guy that was going to beat them in that game. So good team defense, harassing Jack Hughes all game long. If he got the puck, somebody was constantly on him. He didn't have a lot of time and space. So very well defended by the LA Kings. Kings are now 8-4 under interim coach Jim Hiller. So the coaching change certainly appears to have made a difference. And the Kings are playing better hockey since that move. Another plus I have to say is PL Dubois, at least for this game. And let's be honest, I think as Kings fans, we all look at him and take his kind of performances on a game-by-game basis. And I think the coaching staff has kind of admitted that's kind of what they do with him as well. After every game, they get with him and tell him, was this a plus or a minus game? I thought this was a plus game for him. He was active. He won some board battles, had some positive possessions in the offensive zone. And that's basically a possession that leads to something good happening, some good zone time, a shot on goal, those types of things. And he had a primary assist on one of the goals as well. Minuses, not a lot. I mean, there were Drew Doughty took one really bad interference penalty that was so obvious. I think the entire arena saw it before the arm went up. He's better than that, and it's very rare for him to take a really bad penalty like that. Andrei Kopitar did get lucky. He had a delay of game penalty late in this one when the Devils had the extra attacker out. They could have put the Kings down to 4 defenders against 6 forwards, but the referees missed that one, so the Kings do get a break on that one. If you're thinking about the Kings, maybe they have some calls that were missed at one point. Yeah, sometimes the Kings do get some calls in their favor as well, but not a lot of minuses in this one. A great all-around performance for the LA Kings. I did have a quote I wanted to share from the man of the game, our number one star, Philip Deneau. He was talking about that new setup for the Kings, the 11 forwards and the 7 defensemen. And he said about that, this quote, "It's more ice time. It's good. We feel good on the ice, and we've got some young guys that can take it too. Byfield can take some ice time. He's playing well. Kevin as well. So we can all share it. I think it's good. Gets the offense going and a rhythm as well." So that's Philip Deneau, who had the big hat trick, talking about that Kings 11-7 setup that they're using at the moment. And I thought he brought up a great point. Quentin Byfield, who, you could argue he was demoted to the third line going off that top line, but he's now getting more ice time than he had on the top line because he's getting those extra shifts with, on the third pairing or however it's shifting in. So it certainly has worked well so far. I know Jim Hiller has shown that he's not afraid to tinker with things, but I think pretty easy to see that I think they'll keep this 11-7 setup going until he has a reason to change it, and no reason to change after the wins over Vancouver and New Jersey. The NHL trade deadline is this Friday. What's new regarding the deadline and the Kings? That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA and NHL players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We are just 4 days away from the NHL trade deadline, Friday, March the 8th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And so far, things have been relatively quiet, and that includes the LA Kings. Will the Kings make a move before Friday? Well, Kings defenseman Matt Roy continues to be the man in the spotlight for LA ahead of the deadline. He's obviously a very valuable piece on the back end for LA, but he's also an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, and he is in line for a big payday going forward. With the Kings cap situation, it seems unlikely they're going to be able to re-sign him. So do you let a very valuable asset walk away at the end of the season for nothing? Because there are other teams out there that would love to have a Matt Roy, and they'd probably give away some pretty good pieces in return, first-round draft pick, something like that. But you also have a very valuable piece that you're hoping to have on your team for a playoff run. If you trade him, you could certainly slide in Brant Clark on that second pairing on the right side, Jordan Spence on the third pairing on the right side, and see what happens. And I've mentioned this before. If I'm Rob Blake, I need to know what is the exact situation with Adrian Kempe, Victor Arvidsson, Mikey Anderson. What is their injury status? Now, we have heard positive reports that it looks like they're all going to be back before the playoffs. It looks like Adrian Kempe and Mikey Anderson could be back in a few weeks. Victor Arvidsson maybe a bit longer than that. I've said I would hold him out until after the season ends, bring him back for the playoffs, and use that cap space to try and make an addition if you can, or to shore up an area of need. We'll see if that happens or not. But if the Kings have all those guys back for the playoffs, which it appears they will, now that's not official from the Kings. The Kings haven't said anything about those injuries, but those are the reports we've had. John Hoven over at Mayor's Manor reporting those timelines for their return. If those guys are back, I think the Kings are a legit dark horse candidate for a playoff run. But to do that, they also need Matt Roy. I hate losing a good player for nothing, which I think would happen if the Kings retain Matt Roy for the rest of the season. I know they still have maybe hopes of working out some kind of a deal with him, and who knows, it's possible, but I doubt it. Matt Roy, this is his big chance at a big payday, and he has to take advantage of it. And I don't blame him one bit for doing that. But the Kings have been in go-for-it mode since the start of the season. And if those injured players are going to come back, I don't see Rob Blake and management changing that philosophy. And I can't say I'm totally against it either as a fan. Um, I think the likely scenario is the Kings hold on to Matt Roy. They have him for the playoff run. They keep their fingers crossed that after the season, maybe they can work something out. But if they can't, they're willing to take the risk and part with losing a very good player for nothing in return. Obviously, what the Kings do in the postseason will determine whether it was worth the risk or not. Now, Kings forward Arthur Kaliyev is the other player that could be on the move. He's only 22, talented, but he's been a healthy scratch a lot this season. He's having a disappointing year. How much of it is the chicken or the egg? Is he having a bad year and that's why he's being scratched, or is he having a bad year because he's been in and out of the lineup and kind of moved around? You could argue it's a bit of both, but he is most likely the King that will be moved this week. There's also the Tyler Toffoli rumors are still out there as far as the former Stanley Cup winner maybe having a reunion in LA. He will be, though, a sought-after player if New Jersey does, in fact, decide to part ways with him. I'd love to see him return to LA. I think that's a bit of a long shot, however. Now, many around the NHL believe the Kings need to do something to upgrade their goalie situation. If you watched the Kings-Devils game on TNT, you heard their lead in-game analyst, former King Eddie Olczyk, say just that. The Kings need to do something to upgrade in net. As for some of the names we've talked about recently in shows that maybe were players that could be available, there have been a few developments between now and then. The biggest goalie thought to be available at the deadline is Calgary's Jacob Markstrom, although that never seemed to be a realistic target for LA. But apparently, with the way the Flames are playing right now, and because goaltending is such an important position, it looks like the Flames are unwilling to part with Jacob Markstrom unless they get some offer that they just can't refuse. There are rumors if he does go anywhere, it would be to New Jersey. It looks like future Hall of Famer Marc-Andre Fleury isn't going anywhere. I thought he was an intriguing possibility for the LA Kings. The former Stanley Cup winner is 39 years old, but I think he still has one good final run in him. He hasn't played a ton this year as the number 2 goalie for the Minnesota Wild. Future Hall of Famer, again, Cup winner. But there are reports, Michael Russo in The Athletic saying Marc-Andre Fleury isn't going to be moved. He has a no trade clause, and apparently he doesn't want to move out of Minnesota. So unless he changes his mind and thinks he wants to take another cup run with another team, looks like he's not going to move. UC Saros in Nashville, we've talked about, is intriguing. But the Predators are playing very well of late, which we'll detail in a moment. And it seems extremely unlikely Saros is going to go anywhere. Now, Nashville does have a big-time goalie prospect waiting in the wings, but he's not ready to take over right now. Another intriguing name as far as goaltenders that has popped up recently is Boston's Linus Ullmark. Now, he won the Vezina Trophy last year, but the Bruins do have a very solid number 2 goalie in Jeremy Swayman, and they might feel like the 2 goalies are a luxury rather than a necessity, and they could look to make a move as well. But again, I can't see the Kings being in on somebody like that. The other names out there are guys like Jake Allen in Montreal, Elvis Merzlikins in Columbus, Kirill Velmilka in Arizona, Capo Kakinen in San Jose. But are those guys really an upgrade to anything that the Kings have right now? I would say no. So even though there are a lot of people out there think the Kings need to do something to upgrade in net, and maybe you're one of them, what's out there and what the Kings can do and what they can move, it doesn't seem likely to me. I think the Kings will not be making a move for a goalie at the trade deadline, but we shall see. So where are the Kings in the standings, and what does the playoff picture look like right now with now that we're in the second to last month of the season? Also, we'll give you an Ontario rain report as well. All that here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets. I don't, because I use Gametime, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I have used Gametime to buy tickets to NHL and NFL games this season, and I am a very satisfied customer. The app is so easy to use and navigate. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and the best price guaranteed. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase, and I love that you can see the view of where you're going to seat before you buy your ticket. You know exactly what you're going to get when you arrive. And Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. The all-in pricing shows you the total up front. You know what you're getting, a great deal without any hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps on the app. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. The LA Kings face the Vancouver Canucks 7:30 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search LA Kings. Let us check the standings in the Pacific Division and the Western Conference playoff race coming out of the weekend for the Kings. And it is not unrealistic for the Kings to be as high as second in the Pacific Division when it's all said and done. They could also be the final team into the postseason, the final wildcard team as well. There are 4 different slots the Kings could easily fit into, second or third in the Pacific, or the first or the second wildcard spot. And there are 6 different potential first-round playoff opponents for the Kings. You've got Vegas, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, or Vancouver. So a lot to be decided between now and when the regular season ends on April the 18th, which is 45 days away. Let's start with a look at the Pacific Division going into tonight's action. Edmonton has now moved into second place in the Pacific. They've got 73 points, 3 points ahead of the Vegas Golden Knights, who have slipped down to third with 73 points. The Kings are 1 point behind Vegas for that third spot, 72 points. Now, if the Kings overtake the Golden Knights, that would set up an LA-Edmonton first-round playoff matchup for a third straight season. There's also a chance Edmonton could cool off and drop back, and maybe it's the Kings versus the Golden Knights the first round. But I would say right now, if the Kings are able to move into that second or third spot, their most likely opponent would be the Edmonton Oilers. As for the wild card spot, the Kings are the number 1 wild card team right now in the Western Conference. They've got 72 points, like I said. So does Nashville. Nashville also 72 points. The Kings, though, hold the tiebreaker because they have 2 games in hand on the Predators. But Nashville, red hot right now. They've won 8 in a row. And the Kings and Predators do not play again this rest of the season. So Nashville can't gain ground with a win over the LA Kings head-to-head. But Nashville right now playing very, very well. And the Kings, though, holding on to that top wild card spot. The Flames have won 5 in a row. They're making things interesting. They've got 65 points now, 7 points back of both Nashville and LA. It's still a sizable chunk to overtake, but they are getting hot at the right time. We'll see if they can keep it going. The Kings and Flames do face each other twice head-to-head rest of the way, so those could be huge games for the Calgary Flames. But the Flames have shown that they are going to be sellers at the deadline. They've already sold off some pieces, and yet they continue to play well. So kudos to them. St. Louis also has 65 points, just like Calgary. Kings and the Blues have played the same number of games, as have the Flames. They've all played the same number of games, but the Kings and Blues do not have any head-to-head matchups the rest of the way. And then you got the Minnesota Wild kind of hanging on there, 64 points for them, but that's 8 points out of a wild card spot. So if the playoffs started today, the Kings, as the number 1 wild card team in the West, would face the top team in the Central Division. And for the moment, that's the Winnipeg Jets. But Dallas is tied in points with the Jets. They each have 83 points. Jets, though, currently have the tiebreaker, but obviously there could be a change there on a night-by-night basis. Games tonight of interest for the Kings. You got the Golden Knights taking on the Blue Jackets. Flames host the Kraken, and the Blues are at the Devils. We'll update you tomorrow about any changes in the playoff picture. We do have an Ontario Reign report, and it was a great week for the Kings AHL affiliate as they went 3-0 over the past 7 days. Tuesday, they crushed the San Jose Barracuda 8-2. Samuel Fagemo continues to tear up the AHL. He had a hat trick in that one. Goals 26, 27, and 28 on the season. Eric Portillo allowed 2 goals on 40 shots to get the win in net. Friday, the Reign blanked the San Diego Gulls 3-0. Aaron Dell stopped all 24 shots he saw, and Samuel Fagemo added his 29th goal of the season. He is 2 off the AHL goal scoring lead. And on Sunday, the Reign beat the Abbotsford Canucks 2-1. Newly signed Kings defenseman Luke Roy, we told you about him last week, out of the Air Force Academy, scored his first professional goal. It was the game winner late in the third period. What a great first goal for him. That's awesome. Eric Portillo allowed 1 goal on 18 shots in the win. So Ontario has moved up 2 spots in the Pacific Division standings. They've gone from 6th to 4th. Overall record of 28, 19, and 6. This week, they've got 2 games. Wednesday, they will host the Abbotsford Canucks. Sunday, they're at the Calgary Wranglers. And we do have a bit of Reign news as the Kings organization has signed goaltender Aaron Dell, 1-year, 2-way contract worth $775,000. The 34-year-old has appeared in 5 games for the Reign this season. He's got a 2-3 record, .906 save percentage, and a .263 goals against average. He's appeared in 130 career NHL games over parts of 8 seasons, mostly with the San Jose Sharks. His career record is 50, 50, and 13 with a .292 goals against average and a .905 save percentage with 5 shutouts in his NHL career. So Aaron Dell, a guy who has NHL experience, providing some depth in net in the organization, signing a 1-year deal for the rest of the season with the Ontario Reign / LA Kings. And one final quick note, pun intended, the New York Rangers signed their number 2 goaltender, Jonathan Quick, to a 1-year extension. So it looks like Quick will have to wait on his jersey retirement ceremony and celebration with the LA Kings for at least another season after this one. And congrats to Jonathan Quick for earning another contract with the New York Rangers. Greatest goaltender in Kings history. One day we'll get to honor him and remember all the good times, but he's not done with his NHL career just yet, as he's signing on for another year with the New York Rangers. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Tuesday's show, we'll have a preview of that Kings-Canucks rematch. Wednesday, we'll recap the game, and on Thursday, Austin Stanovich of the Hockey News scheduled to stop by. Going to talk about the LA Kings and what's going on with them up to the trade deadline on Friday. We'll also have a quick preview of that night's Kings-Senators game coming up on Thursday. Friday, we'll recap that game, add any Kings-related news at the trade deadline, and have another Kings fan feedback show. The email address to get in on the feedback show is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You're always welcome to leave your comments on the YouTube episodes as well. We'd love for you to stay interactive with the show by following us on social media. We're on X, Twitter, and Instagram at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. And as always, go Kings, go.